The Lonely Lighthouse Keeper, a heartwarming sleep history story set in the 1940s. The sea has always kept its own secrets. Long before satellites guided ships across the oceans, lonely lighthouses stood like silent guardians against the endless waves. Their steady beams pierced the darkness, warning sailors of hidden rocks and dangerous. Tonight, let us travel back to the early 1940s, to a tiny rocky island far from the mainland, where one man lived almost completely alone. His name was Thomas Hale. For nearly 15 years, Thomas had served as the keeper of Greystone Lighthouse, a tall white tower standing against the crashing Atlantic Ocean. Every evening before sunset, he climbed the narrow spiral staircase, carrying a heavy can of lamp oil. At the very top, he carefully polished the great Fresnel lens until it shone like crystal. When darkness covered the sea, the great lantern awakened. Its bright beam slowly turned across the waves. Again, and again, and again. Night after night. Ships passing in the distance never knew the keeper's face. Year after year. Ships passing in the distance never knew the keeper's face. Yet countless sailors reached home safely because a lonely man refused to let the light go out. Yet countless sailors reached home safely because a lonely man refused to let the light go out. Life on Greystone Island followed the same quiet rhythm every single day. Thomas rose before sunrise. He swept the lighthouse stairs. He inspected the machinery. He painted weathered railings. He repaired broken windows after winter. He collected rainwater. He tended a small vegetable garden protected by stone walls from the salty wind. A few chickens wandered around the island. 2 curious seagulls visited every morning. Sometimes playful seals rested on nearby rocks. They became his only companions. Once each month, a small supply boat arrived from the mainland. It brought flour, coffee, canned food, fresh letters, newspapers, lamp oil, and occasionally a warm pie baked by the harbour baker's wife. The captain always asked the same question. "Everything all right out here, Thomas?" Thomas always smiled. "Everything's peaceful." Then the boat disappeared beyond the horizon. Silence returned. For many years, that silence never changed. But the sea has a strange way of delivering unexpected gifts. One autumn evening, a powerful storm swept across the Atlantic. Dark clouds swallowed the sky. Rain lashed against the lighthouse windows. Thunder echoed across the sea. The enormous waves crashed against the cliffs below. Inside the tower, Thomas remained calm. Storms were part of his life. He checked the lantern one last time. The light continued turning faithfully through the rain. Near midnight, Between the roar of the wind, he heard something unusual. Not the cry of a gull, not the sound of drifting wood. A voice, very faint, almost impossible to hear. He grabbed his waterproof coat and hurricane lantern. Carefully climbing down the slippery rocks, he searched the shore. Another cry, this time closer. Half hidden between broken pieces of a small wooden fishing boat, a tiny child clung desperately to a floating plank. The little boy could not have been older than 6. His hands were cold. His clothes were soaked. His eyes were barely open. Without hesitation, Thomas carried him into the lighthouse. He wrapped the child in warm blankets. He lit the stove. He prepared hot soup. Slowly, the boy opened his eyes. "My name is Samuel," he whispered. It was the first child's voice Thomas had heard inside the lighthouse in over a decade. The following morning, the storm had disappeared. The sea was calm once again. The supply boat could not arrive immediately because of rough waters beyond the harbour. So Samuel remained on the island. One day became 3. 3 became 7. Thomas discovered that the quiet lighthouse no longer felt empty. Samuel followed him everywhere. He helped gather eggs. He watered the garden. He laughed whenever the seagulls stole pieces of bread. Every evening, Thomas allowed him to climb the lighthouse stairs. Together, they polished the great lens until it sparkled. Samuel loved watching the giant beam sweep across the dark ocean. "It looks like a giant star," he said. Garden. He laughed whenever the seagulls stole pieces of bread. Every evening, Thomas allowed him to climb the lighthouse stairs. Together, they polished the great lens until it sparkled. Samuel loved watching the giant beam sweep across the dark ocean. "It looks like a giant star," he said. Thomas smiled. Every sailor depends on that star. For the first time in many years, Thomas found himself telling stories. Stories about ships, about whales, about constellations, about sailors who followed the North Star across endless waters. The lighthouse had always protected strangers. Now, it had become a home. Eventually, the Coast Guard arrived. They had been searching for survivors after a fishing vessel disappeared during the storm. Samuel's parents had not survived. The news broke Thomas's heart. The officers thanked him for saving the boy's life. Weeks later, something unexpected happened. The authorities asked Thomas whether he would be willing to become Samuel's guardian until distant relatives could be located. Thomas looked toward the little boy standing beside the lighthouse door.
Samuel quietly reached for his hand. There was nothing more to discuss. Years passed. No relatives were ever found. Samuel stayed. The lonely lighthouse slowly transformed into a place filled with laughter. Together they repaired fences, painted boats, read books during rainy afternoons, celebrated birthdays with homemade cakes. And every evening they climbed the tower together. Thomas taught Samuel every responsibility of keeping the light alive. How to clean the glass, how to polish the great lens, how to listen to the weather, how to respect the sea. Most importantly, he taught him that even the smallest light can guide someone safely home. When Thomas finally grew old, climbing the spiral staircase became difficult. Without being asked, Samuel quietly took over each evening. He lit the great lantern himself. The beam continued turning across the sea exactly as it always had. Years later, sailors spoke not of one lighthouse keeper, but of two. An old man who spent half his life protecting strangers, and a little boy whom the sea had delivered on a stormy night. No one knew exactly why fate had brought them together. Perhaps the ocean simply understood that loneliness, like darkness, only lasts until someone carries a light into it. And somewhere beyond the endless horizon, Greystone Lighthouse continued shining through every storm. A quiet reminder that kindness can arrive from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the family we are searching for is the family that finds us. Is the family that finds us. Good night.